Welcome, friends, to this episode of It's Not You, but Sometimes It Is. I was so thrilled to be able to have this conversation with Audra Palakodety. And Audra is just one of those crazy, flexible, adaptable people. And in this really fascinating conversation, she shares how communication and clarity has been the key to her success. I know you're going to love this conversation. Welcome aboard. Welcome, friends, to this episode of It's Not You, but Sometimes It Is, where I get to have super fun conversations with brilliant executives. And today I'm super excited to have Miss Audra Palakodety with me. Audra is the COO at APOORVA, which is a technology company. I will let you describe it a little bit more in Denver. But Audra has had a really interesting career trajectory in dramatically different sectors, from tourism, entertainment, to energy, to software, all over the place. So you are one of those insanely adaptable, flexible humans. And Audra, can you give us a brief introduction to your role, what it really means to be COO there in this company right now, and just like a minute about your windy career path?
Sure. My role as COO here embraces a lot of things, which I think a COO role typically does. You know, everything from um, HR to strategy. Um, I work very hard on our partnerships with the company and a good deal with processes, procedures, refining what we're doing, sales, some high level account management too. So it's a great variety, and I learn every day, which I love.
Awesome, awesome. So you have been in a lot of different settings, lots of different teams. You've been a leader of leaders for quite a while. So can you talk to us about an unexpected situation that you have had to encounter in your leadership, where something unexpected got in the way of forward progress or momentum, kind of on the people side of things? What happened and how did you overcome it?
Well, I would say probably more recently, we had a challenge with getting some momentum around a project. And it was a good aha that when you work for a company, we're a multinational company. We focus on custom software development for our clients, and we're also moving into transitioning into creating our own products. Um, Through the consulting and opportunity we had with a client, our team was struggling, and then I realized it was because it was a business that our team really didn't have any exposure to in India, right? So it was a lesson that we need to step back sometimes and make sure that before we rush into the tasks and the project and the deliverables, that we take a moment and make sure that our teams understand the business that our customers have, what their goals are, and then what's the intersection of what we are providing. So just giving them that foundational background and
Mhm.
not just leapfrogging to here's the project, tool, here's our plan to execute, but really starting with what our customers' why is and how we're a part of that. So that was a good aha. And now I take a very different approach to launching our new projects,
Mhm.
that we start with really a good conversation with all the team members involved from our team and our customers team. And really they get a chance to explain their business, what makes them shine, and where we're going to help them shine brighter.
Awesome. Yeah, I think we underestimate people's natural resistance to change. Change is seen as a threat. And we get all excited, in these leadership roles where we see the opportunity, we want the momentum, and we don't stop and think this is going to be threatening to people. I need to bring them along, give them a foundation, help them feel secure about it. Right.
Mhm.
So, um, and people in COO roles tend to be pretty driven, right? And very oriented toward goals and processes, and a little bit, we have to remind ourselves about the people side of things sometimes.
Mhm.
So, Sometimes we as leaders tend to learn how we want to lead by seeing how we don't want to lead. We have to experience some bad bosses and some bad leadership above us, lateral, below us, and start to really cultivate who we want to be as a leader. So, can you give me any examples of what you've learned from bad bosses or bad leaders? And do you think bad bosses are fixable?
Well, early in my career, I worked with a leader who avoided difficult conversations. And that avoidance created a lot of ambiguity and slowed decision making and progress.
Mm-hmm.
And it taught me the value of direct, respectful communication and timely feedback, that clarity is kindness in
Mm-hmm.
leadership. And I very much have worked on being able to deliver difficult news or have tough conversations. And I feel that it can be done very respectfully, and it should be. Again, that clarity is kindness. You don't want to be running around in circles, and nobody wants to feel like their time is wasted, especially when they're well intentioned and want to deliver, good outcomes. So I think that's important. I do believe that most bad bosses are fixable. Leadership is a skill set with self awareness, coaching, accountability. I think people can grow. I think the key factor is that they're willing to,
Yeah.
and if they want to improve. And I've worked for people who would embrace change, and I've worked for people who just couldn't get out of their own way
Mm-hmm.
and weren't willing to improve or even see that maybe there was something off with
Mm-hmm.
their leadership approach.
Yep. It's so ironic. I've had people pay me to coach them to improve. And then whenever I suggest an area of growth and improvement, it's immediate justifications and defensiveness. It's like, hey, it's okay. Like we need to be able to have these kinds of conversations. And I've had to develop that skill too, and being able to lovingly provide clarity and feedback and provide the right kind of authentic support. And that
Exactly.
is a skill that is honed over many years, as you know. And research tells us over and over that our social emotional skills are going to be the number one predictor of our success in a leadership role, right? That social awareness, that ability to know when to have a hard conversation and actually do it. And yet, I think we really undervalue it. We don't assess our emotional intelligence. We don't explicitly talk to other leaders and coach them in their social awareness, their ability to sustain trust. And I know that you've worked on it quite a lot. So,
Yeah.
how have you worked on your emotional intelligence? What did you do to improve in these ways?
Well, at one of my previous jobs, we were really blessed with the opportunity to have professional development as part of like one of our benefits.
Mm.
And it really helped a lot. I mean, I had some great coaches. We did some amazing assessments over time. We had really good conversations about setting intentions. And I think if I think of the one thing that was most impactful was setting intentions.
Hmm.
Even when I have personal conversations with friends or family or even my husband, and I think it might be a difficult subject, I take a moment and I think, okay, what is my intention?
Hmm.
And sometimes I will actually state that, right?
Hmm.
And they're used to me now, so they don't like, what are you doing anymore? But I'll be like, okay, here's my intention. Because I want you to hear that first in case maybe it doesn't come out right, the rest of the things I say, but know that my intention is this. And it also helps level set it in my own mind. Okay, this is my intention. So let's make sure I don't veer off of
Hmm.
what my intention is in
Yeah.
this conversation, for best results.
Mhm. Yeah. So that when we get emotional and nervous in those hard conversations, we derail really easily, right? Because we kind of lose some of our brain functioning, we lose some of our consciousness. So having a very clear intention kind of puts the guardrails on things and keeps us moving the right way. And that's something that you have to drill yourself in over time. It's a skill, right?
It is.
So, um, you've done so much work on yourself, but now I have to ask the hard question, right? Of when in your career in leadership did you realize that maybe you were your own worst enemy? You kept having this problem, and you realized you were battling an old mindset or trait or a lack of skill. What did you learn and carry forward from that experience?
Hmm. I think that a major learning moment for me was recognizing my instinct to personally solve too many problems. I came from a place of accountability and wanting to do the right thing, but it limited delegation and team ownership. And I
Mm,
had to accept that everyone owns their own actions. And what works for me may not work for someone else.
yeah.
And more recently, a couple years ago, I read The Let Them Theory by Mel Robbins. And I was like,
Mhm.
oh, I could have used this so much personally and professionally over the years. But I think about that, and sometimes when I think I'm getting spun up about something, I'll be like, just let them. It'll be fine. In the
Yeah.
big, scheme of things, it's all going to work out.
Hmm.
And I think it's really important to empower others,
Hmm.
even when the outcomes aren't perfect, because my perfect is different than your perfect, and who's to say what's what, right? And so that's important, and it's an essential for scaling, being able to let people shine, give them that space,
Hmm.
and then that way I can focus on the higher level strategy and things that I need to also. So I
Yeah.
think that be more self-aware of like I don't have to solve it all or do it all, and it's going to be okay
Hmm.
was a battle I needed to have and get
Yeah.
over.
I think we don't talk enough about the fact that like most micromanagement and most controlling behavior comes from a place of care and compassion and empathy, where we're just trying to help someone do something the quickest way, or we think, you know what, I already have this figured out and they're going to struggle with it. I'm just going to jump in here and rescue them or just give them the answer. And that completely strips away the learning opportunity and the growth for them, right?
Yeah,
But it comes from a good place. It comes from us just wanting what's best for them and wanting that forward progress and the results. And I think I haven't met a leader that hasn't struggled with that, with wanting to just jump in and do it ourselves or fix things for people.
hmm,
So you've done a lot of personal growth and development, and you've been very intentional about it. And you're kind of in this pinnacle role, right? You're in the C-suite. Where else do you go, Audra? So I like to ask, what do you see as your next step in your personal growth, or kind of your own development, so that
hmm,
you could be really fulfilled, low stress, right? Still high performing, but have the kind of influence you want.
yeah. I think at this stage of my career, it feels more like refinement than reinvention.
Mm-hmm.
To stay fulfilled, I'm focusing more on our strategic innovation. I'm really excited about this next chapter of us building out our own products. Um, and it's a shift. We've become kind of our own consultants, right? Before we consulted for others and we created custom software for others and other tech strategies. But now we're doing it for ourselves, and it's interesting to be in that space where like I said, we're consulting for ourselves and are we taking our own advice and are we planning like we would with customers?
Mm-hmm.
So that's been something that's been very fulfilling and challenging, for sure challenging. But I like that challenge and it's still in our same space, but it energizes me and it's kind of fun to create a product where, you're hoping that you're going to be creating something that can have some long-term impact, which is kind of fun. Um, to minimize stress, I go to more like, let's also make sure that we're creating, good resilient systems and good
Mm-hmm.
processes to continue to be able to pivot our organization forward in a careful scaling way through people and processes and technology. Um, and I think that when I feel like I have good processes in place, it minimizes my stress. So um, that's kind of where I see the next area of growth between our teams and what we're doing here.
Yeah. Yeah. We were talking earlier about the engineering mindset of I want structure and predictability. I want all the data, right? And that's a momentum slower, which is not a bad thing all the time, right? So you've got to have that balance of drive and excitement and innovation and momentum balanced with some structure, to help people kind of have that stability and coming from a place of stability and confidence. And everyone kind of falls in a different place when it comes to that drive, the gas pedal versus the gas brake. or the
Yeah.
brake, the gas brake, gas pedal versus brake. And so you just described that really beautifully. You're excited about this, you want the momentum, but you also realize we need to be intentional and structured in the way we do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's not so sexy, like some of this leadership stuff, like we have to be predictable and provide structure, not sexy stuff, really important for results and for people to have that kind of psychological safety.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So, your company's taking a huge shift and what, like your whole mission and what you're doing. And so I'm imagining there's also kind of a cultural shift among the leadership team. So what do you feel is needed from the leadership team in the company to be where you need to be in 5 years? Like, what do you see as the development or the structure, the growth of the leadership team and their behaviors and their approaches at work to be able to be optimal in 5 years?
Well, I think we have a really strong foundation in our leadership, but leadership optimization is never static, right? We're learning more things. And I think also really I'm working on, emphasizing our anticipatory leadership. How do we continue to create leaders amongst our team members as they're flexing into slightly different roles too, finding out, really identifying where their strengths are and allowing them to dive into those. So creating leaders throughout our organization
Hmm.
and areas that they're most suited to. So I think that that requires us to continue to strengthen our foresight to make sure that we're communicating all through the organization. It's really easy. And it's funny because I think back to other times when I wasn't in a leadership role, how you'd be like, what is even going on in there? What are they thinking? Right? I don't understand why we're pivoting. And so I try to remember that now that I am a leader to make sure that I bring the team along. Like, hey, we need to take a beat and explain all the things that we've done this past week, because to them it might look like, what are you doing? So I think it's important to keep that communication, and develop our new leaders, and just multiply um, our strengths across the organization through those people. So we're also working a lot on, the cross-functional collaboration,
Hmm.
and trying different team members, collaborating with others because they bring in, different skill sets and stuff. So we've
Nice.
been really intentional about doing that, and that will continue to do over the next 5 years for sure.
Especially important in a phase of growth to make sure the different teams and different departments and areas are really clicking and collaborating, aware of each other's needs, working well together.
Mm,
Because again, that growth and change can really upset the relationships and people's ability to collaborate, and that costs companies a lot of money. Poor trust and poor collaboration will cost you all kinds of efficiency results, but also engagement, right? When people don't work well and have a lot of trust in each other and they're not collaborating well, then they start to make mistakes. They start to hold information to themselves and get that threat response that really derails teams.
yeah, and that's been something we've really worked on too with a multinational company. Um, Kind of changing the culture in a way of saying, like, it's really actually more respectful for you to speak up than for you to hold back. Like, please let us know if something looks amiss. Don't be so respectful that you don't tell us what's going on, or what you see that where we might have a blind spot. So
Mhm.
that's been something that we've worked on, especially in the last 6 months, of like, kind of felt like maybe people were holding back. And I knew it was coming from a place of respect, but
Mm.
in order for us to improve, we need the whole story. And, go ahead and
Yeah.
you can respectfully deliver that news if you think you might be saying that's something controversial, or maybe that is a wait a second before you move forward with your great idea. We need to hear those. And so we've really been working on making sure that our team knows speaking up and is respectful as well.
Really took a lot of attunement and awareness for you to realize that that was a cultural dynamic that was slowing things down. You have to just kind of shift expectations there. That's really interesting.
Yeah, it was an aha, and it just you know I identified it, and I said, I think we need to address this. because I think it's really important. And I feel like this could be something that's holding us back.
And
And
people have responded well. They're doing it. They're bringing problems
yes,
forward.
yes,
Okay.
they are. And so I'm so glad that we took a beat and spent a little bit of time on this, and we're reinforcing it with each conversation and meeting too. And I think sometimes it's important when you're giving your team an opportunity to speak up. Sometimes you need to allow that quietness, even though it might be a little longer pause than you want,
Mhm.
for people to gather their thoughts and then say them. And I think sometimes we could be too quick, like, anybody else have anything to say? Okay, good. And so let's take a little bit longer and make sure we allow some spaciousness for folks to, it's okay for it to be quiet, and it's okay for people to have a moment to think about what they want to say and how to say.
Mhm.
Maybe they're just figuring out how to word it.
Yeah, yeah. And some people's brains need processing time. They can't just think and speak right away. And I have trouble remembering that because I'm one of those people that's just, my mind's always, 5 minutes out or an hour out in the future, and I'm too quick and I need to slow down for people that are probably a little more articulate than me, a little more thoughtful than me. So that leads me to my last question because I think about all the advice I wish I could have given myself 15 years ago or so. So if I gave you a time machine, Audra, and you could go back and give yourself advice, what would it be?
I would tell my younger self to invest earlier in relationships and self-awareness. Um, And I would say, the technical and operational skills matter, but I think longer term success has definitely been built on learning how to create trust, um, being adaptable, continuous learning, um, and patience. I think as I've grown older, I've become a lot more patient. I'd like to think I have. And It's okay to not know everything. It will come.
Nice. Yeah, I think, some of us really overvalue our our career development on the technical side of things and overemphasize that, and we don't realize that it's going to be our relationships and our awareness that makes or breaks us.
Yes, definitely.
Audra, you have so much wisdom over all these years. I hope the people around you appreciate you and appreciate all the work you've done on yourself and your awareness. And it has been an absolute joy to talk with you. Thanks for sharing all of your nuggets of wisdom with us.
Thanks, Meg. I think we're always, always ever a work in progress. So thank you.